Hello, I'm Maxine Paintain and I'm a lead product manager in the DWP Innovation Lab. I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about what the Innovation Lab is, what it does, how it works, and the value drivers behind it, but also a little bit about how we've transformed to respond to the recent pandemic, the COVID crisis, and what that's meant in terms of opportunities for the Innovation Lab. I've been working in DWP for a little while now, more recently in the lab, but before that I've worked in lots of different spaces across the organisation. I'm incredibly proud to work for the department. What I do and the difference I make, the impact that I can have is really important and it really matters. And knowing that I can improve and make life better for all kinds of people is one of the biggest motivations. I work in DWP Digital right now, and our aim is to improve how customers interact with DWP by digitalising services where it's beneficial to do so. Digitalising services creates improvements, especially to the customer experience, to customer journeys, and also removes the waste out of those journeys as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about the organisation, the department itself. So DWP, the Department for Work and Pensions, is a government department responsible for welfare, pensions and child maintenance policy. It's the UK's biggest public service department. It administers state pension and a range of working age and disability ill health benefits to around 20 million claimants and customers. In terms of the organisation's size, we employ around 85,000 people. That might have increased recently as we've responded to the spike in demand as a result of the pandemic. We provide a number of different services in a number of ways through Job Centre Plus, the pension service and the child maintenance service. Our key priorities at the moment are significant. Running an effective welfare system, and that's pretty kind of important right now, especially the world we live in. Enabling people to be financially independent and help them back into employment as a result of some of the life events they may have experienced, especially right now, is absolutely paramount to helping the post-COVID situation re-emerge and obviously the recovering economy as well. We support lots of different people, single parents, people that have just recently become employed, people who are trying to find work, people who have left care, people who have just recently come out of prison. There are lots and lots of different types of people that the department supports. So I just wanted to talk about a little my journey into innovation. I always thought myself as a creative. I like being around energy, pace, and high creative environments. But above all, throughout my career journey, I found out that actually I really like people and I like different perspectives, divergent perspectives, unique thoughts, challenging ideas, and connecting them. As an aside, my favourite listen is Desert Island Discs, and that's because I get to discover about lots of people that I never knew existed that have done absolutely amazing things, and that makes me think, wowzers, what can I do with all of that information and what I've learned about them to connect things, to understand ideas, to understand what's happening in the wider world. And I think the power of building networks and connecting things again has been really, really important to me throughout my career in the department as well as life itself. Steve Jobs once said that creativity is just connecting things. And when you ask creative people about how they did something, they feel a little bit guilty because they didn't really do it. They just saw something and it seemed obvious to them from there on. That's really powerful for me and really powerful that I see lots of things and I've got an ability in the role that I do at the moment to connect things. I've been a long time in my career journey and recognising what's important to me, what inspires me, what I can do, what my strengths are, have been paramount to where I am today and the things that I'm able to do. I'm not a technologist, I'm not a data scientist, nor do I specialise in AI or robotics, but I know lots of amazing people around me in the Innovation Lab that do, and drawing on their huge amount of knowledge and their perspective and their skills is hugely important and valuable in connecting things and making the Innovation Lab a success in DWP. Just moving on from that, I just want to tell you more about the Innovation Lab now and what it is. If you're not familiar with the Innovation Lab, you may be forgiven for exactly asking what it involves, especially for a government department like ours, where there's a huge amount of innovation that already exists across the department. But putting it simply, it's a framework for rapidly generating ideas and turning them into some kind of value within the organisation. As a product person, I'm all about asking the whys and seeking out the value and translating that from the power of the networks that exist around me. So I do ask lots of questions. I seek out opportunities. I form alliances and connections and leverage that expertise to help me elicit the value, especially within the innovation context. The Innovation Lab aims to achieve the followings, particularly around bringing diverse and external thinking into the business, identifying new opportunities. There is a huge innovation ecosystem that exists. Part of the role of what the lab does within the organisation is to reach out within that ecosystem, to understand where and what is happening, not only across government, but beyond that. What are the latest trends on the horizon? What technologies? How are people thinking differently? What methodologies and creative approaches are really helpful and going to be helpful for us to respond to future citizen needs? And that's a really important part of what we do. Forming those new alliances from that and partnerships from that network is equally as important to help us understand, drive, test and experiment and find the value in those new ideas as well. Hothousing new solutions and generating ideas and turning them into value. I've spoke about being a product person and seeking out the value in the things that we do in the Innovation Lab, but eliciting that value and understanding if an idea has potential and how that can go some way to solving a problem or learning. How can we learn from that idea by quickly understanding the potential that it has and then being able to say how it might help us to achieve some of those challenges in the mid to long-term future. Incubating a culture of innovation throughout the organisation is really important too. Innovation is not just about technology, it's not just about digital, but it's about cultures and it's about influencing those cultures. It's about helping people to think differently, helping people to think about a problem or a way that they perceived a problem to persist or exist. It's about challenging those ideas. It's about challenging the ways in which we traditionally might have thought about how we could meet that problem or how we could solve it. It's about bringing some future thinking in. It's about bringing all of that network and challenging how we could do things. It's about introducing new approaches to new methodologies to help people really kind of think in a different way to what they may have done previously. So the spreading and influencing the innovation culture across the department beyond the immediate area that I work in is really, really important as well. Okay, so the innovation journey, what actually is it? So innovation labs all vary in their purpose, and having an operating model to successfully function is really important. The double diamond is not new to anybody in the design spectrum, and it's been around now for about 15 years, I think. The two diamonds represent a process of exploring an issue, or more widely, deeply, that divergent thinking, and then taking focused action to converge. In the lab, we take a very user-centric approach to the way that we look at problems from the very beginning. We're always looking for new solutions and different ways to meet those challenges, as I've already mentioned. But I think by putting the humanization and the user at the center of what we do in an innovation lab really helps us to understand then how we can achieve that value and how we can solve the problems in the right way with the right solutions. Yeah, we talk about technology. Yeah, we explore technology. We explore AI. We explore lots of different things in what we do in the lab, but it's really important that it's grounded in a problem. It's grounded in meeting a challenge, and it's grounded in understanding what that user is and how we're going to help them and how we're going to help them access the services of the department easier, quicker, faster, and that they can respond to the services that we create in a better way too. So how do we do that? Before we embark on a journey, we absolutely look at all the research and the insights that we have around a particular focus or a problem that we might want to go about solving. We source opportunities, we create pipelines of ideas that we want to kind of explore as well. There's obviously lots of activity within a technical radar sense. So how might we leverage some of that innovation from a technical point of view that we know about to really solve some of the problems that we've researched and got a good understanding of. And it's about bringing the two together in a really quick, rapid, creative environment. We tend to work within short sprints of about 6 to 8 weeks, and that's from very much starting with the problem space, understanding it, research, insights, synthesizing all of that, ideating and prototyping and leveraging all of what we know from the ecosystem to then come out the other end with, this is a potential of how we might meet that problem. Or along that whole journey, it's absolutely about, it might not be the right thing to do as well. Just moving on slightly. So what are the value drivers behind the lab? Okay, so it's really important to have a goal and a purpose behind what a lab does, and particularly what the DWP Digital Lab does. It helps organisations to understand why you exist and what your purpose is. And especially in a lab, it helps to leverage senior sponsorship, senior allies, and that's really important to land any ideas that we explore in the lab. And it can often be a biggest challenge of any lab. You know, once you've been through a proof of concept or tested an idea and come out with something at the other end, what do you do that? How do you ground it within an organisation to then actually productionise it and make it a reality? The lab doesn't productionise anything. We experiment with ideas and we test ideas and we learn a hell of a lot. What's really important is the other end is that sponsorship and that leverage you have to actually make that a reality. So measuring success also helps to articulate the value that we add to the organisation. And that's constantly a test that you are actually, you know, checking out ideas or solving the right problems, that you are finding value, that you are finding the right things to do within the space that we work. I just want to pick up on a few of the value drivers that I've shown on this slide. We absolutely identify high impact solutions to key problems to shape what that future could look like. The lab works in horizons, so we look in the medium to long term. So what does the future citizen look like for the organisation? How will they respond to some of the services? How do they want to respond to some of the services? When we look at how the pandemic has changed the world around us, and I'll go on to talk about that shortly, you know, that looks significantly different as we emerge. That will look different in a year's time and probably 2 years' time. But the lab and knowing what's on the horizon gives us an opportunity to experiment and understand some of that and ground it and find out whether that's worthy of an investment. So absolutely all about the high impact solutions. I've talked about new perspectives and my particular interest in that intersection of perspectives, but that is absolutely what the lab exploits. It's all about bringing together a range of academics, technologists, businesses, startups, whatever that may be, into a space to really leverage and accelerate and challenge and bring about change in the right way. So those ecosystems and navigating them are vital and are really a core part of our value drivers. The future citizen, understanding them, the horizons, what we do, how can we improve things? You know, we want to make services better. We want to improve things for our claimants and our customers, and having a view of what that future citizen looks like and how we might support that even more and accelerate what we do towards that future citizen's key. Cross-boundary problem solvers. We don't just focus on problems that are just really key for the department. We absolutely share common problems across government. You know, many of our claimants and our customers are part of a wider journey that means that they touch upon various different government departments. For example, HMRC, Ministry of Justice, whatever that may be. There are lots and lots of departments that share the same problems, and we are really interested and really want to work across those boundaries to solve those common problems. The sharing of information, how do we make it easier for some of our citizens, for example, to go on those journeys across multiple government departments without having to do the same interaction time and time again, when actually they just need the support they need, you know, to be able to, as I mentioned at the beginning, live financially independent or seek help about their current circumstance. So that's really important to us to look wider than the department of how we solve cross-boundary problems. We're absolutely about learning fast as well. You know, the value and the pace of our learning by experimenting rapidly and accelerating that learning and sharing that outwards is really, really important. I mentioned that we worked within 6 to 8 week sprints. The pace and the acceleration is really important to be able to learn and fail fast or continue to to find a place for those ideas to then come to life. So yeah, pace and learning fast is key. So failure, I briefly touched on that on the last slide of how important failure is. And I mean failure in the context of not every idea that a lab and an innovation lab explores is going to be a brilliant idea that should be adopted and everybody should gather around. A key part of what we do in the lab, and it's really important that the value of our learnings and the value of our outputs are that not everything is the right thing to do. We are absolutely about influencing choices and strategic decisions by showcasing and learning that investments in some areas aren't the right thing or will not meet the challenges that we have ahead of us or solve the right problems in the right way. So that innovation and creativity without failure is absolutely key. And it's really important that we embrace that failure and that everybody around and in around the lab that works with us sees that some of the things that aren't the success are still absolutely critically valuable in terms of the outputs and the learnings that we share outwards as well. There's also something around, adopting the models in an innovation lab, changing to the world around us, changing to the new challenges that we have around us as well. And learning about great new approaches and methodologies that we can use in a lab to really accelerate and think again is really, really important, and maturing and evolving those models happens along the way. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit now about the unintended consequences in extreme circumstances. And by those extreme circumstances, I absolutely mean the past year. Our lives for the past year and every aspect of our lives has changed significantly. And our world as we know it is fundamentally different to what it was in a pre-COVID landscape. And when we emerge, it will be totally different. And COVID for the department presented some immediate challenges and some challenges and opportunities as we look ahead into that future space and that future horizon about how we might innovate and do things differently. Just to bring that into context, what that's meant for the department is that the way that citizens access our services has been completely turned on its head. The way that we deliver and the environments that we work in day to day are completely different to what they were a year ago. Our daily life is consumed by Teams calls, by Zooms, by being online, by children running around in the background and interrupting. All of those things are part of what seems to be the norm now, and balancing the whole life seems to be what will be emerging out as we come out of the post-pandemic landscape. The way we work and our operating models have been flipped on their head. The ways of working in our job centres, our contact centres have all changed. There's been a rapid move to home working for tens of thousands of people around the department. This has meant our digital capabilities has had to shift, enabling everybody to respond to those rising demands in citizens and claimants that need the help because of a life event as a result of the COVID pandemic. They've suddenly become ill, or they found themselves without a job and they are unemployed and they want to get back into the workspace, but whilst they're finding their way back, they need the financial support to do so. So it's really important that we've still been able to continue to deliver those vital services, but in a different way, enabling, the kit and the technology and the enablement for all of our contact centre staff, our job centre staff, our work coaches to continue to deliver those vital services has been a complete change. And as I've mentioned, we've really been able to change the way that we have worked and recognise that there are lots of opportunities within that. The pace of that change has been quite incredible. I'd like to say overnight, but with very rapidly, all of those things that I've spoken about in terms of the way that people work and the way that people access our services, that pace of change has been incredibly rapid and really surprising, I think, for a lot of people in terms of how we've actually responded to that and how that people have adapted to that really quickly as well. We've been able to challenge a little bit people's risk appetites about suddenly changing to what is a new normal or what continues to evolve to be a new normal, and how we've suddenly flipped, from 900 sites across the department to tens of thousands of people working from home, and enabling that, and probably being in a landscape pre-COVID that probably really didn't seem a possibility, but it's happened, and it's happened at pace. And the risk and the attitude towards that type of change, that quick pace, rapid change and that transformation has definitely shifted. The vocabulary that we use around all of this has probably shifted as well. Who knew that the word COVID would be part of our daily conversations, and that the way people are feeling and are responding to that as well is significantly different. And I think we have to acknowledge the vocabulary that we use around all of digital change and transformation and pace and risk appetites as well. I think it's a really important point. So in terms of responding to those extreme circumstances and what we've done as a department, I think I'd like to just kind of mention, so what does that mean in terms of the opportunity? What opportunity is that presented for innovation, for digital and for transformation? So there's absolutely been a changing of mindsets. You know, history has shown that crises drives innovation, and we've absolutely seen that in abundance in day-to-day working right now. There is a real opportunity for us to think about, so what does that mean for the future as we are learning more as a society, as we are learning more about the pandemic, and then we are learning more together. What does that actually mean of what the future could look like and be like? I think it's, you know, I've mentioned earlier, one of the biggest things that we've done is been able to change those mindsets and become more open to change and become more open to doing things in a very different way. Those risk appetites that I mentioned earlier have absolutely probably become more tolerant, that we find that we can change things, and our risk to doing so is probably a little bit lower than it was before. Absolutely, we've all built a level of resilience. If it's not only from, you know, having our children around us and helping to try and educate them in different ways, but our resilience levels to that change and adapting to that change is absolutely heightened now, you know, and put that against the changing of mindsets and the risk appetites and lots of kind of, you know, there is a lots of emerging opportunities just there alone to embrace innovation and to embrace it even more. Change in digital transformation can happen, and I think we've proven that. You know, we've proven that with the way that our operations have probably changed from lots of people working from home and the way that we've delivered services and people digital capabilities. It can happen, and it can happen really, really quickly. It can be done with pace, and we can accelerate change as well. And innovation absolutely does have a really key role to play in that. We can challenge and redefine what normal is. If we're doing that on a daily basis, the more that we learn, and the more that we do that in a lab environment as well, we challenge the perceptions of those norms. Again, those intersection of perspectives that we bring from a lab perspective are all around challenging what we know now, what we think that future might look like, and what we think normal may be on the horizon. So, you know, absolutely an opportunity for the Innovation Lab here, but for lots of digital transformation to challenge and define what do we perceive and what do we think the new normal is going to be. It's opened up an abundance of opportunity to collaborate. I mentioned earlier that one of our key drivers was absolutely about working cross-boundary and not in perceived silos of departments. You know, lots of opportunity for collaboration. We only have to look at the way that we've delivered services across our, you know, the way that we're standing up testing units, the way that we are delivering a program across government at the moment around, you know, vaccinations. And again, as I've mentioned, our journeys are holistic across lots of government departments. What this has allowed us to do is probably look at those even more intensely and think about what are the opportunities. There is a lot more willingness to collaborate and to collaborate quicker. So therefore bring the innovation into that space as well to really spark and inspire that divergent thinking. I think, again, that's a great opportunity that we really do want to leverage. I've talked a lot about transformation, and I've talked a lot about digital change, and I've talked a lot about innovation. But one of the core values, obviously, of DWP Digital is actually that we do digital with purpose, and that there is a purpose to everything that we do, and that we do drive out improvements and we make things better for the citizens and the claimants that we do help on a day-to-day basis. I just want to go on to talk about some of the principles of innovation success and what I found out along the way, and I've certainly mentioned a couple of times throughout the slides that I've talked about. We are absolutely ambassadors of innovation culture. That innovation culture about embracing different ways of working, about embracing different thinking, all of those intersection of perspectives that are come into play within our lab. All of that is about us influencing and shaping and challenging and enabling people to think big and to think differently and realise what the art of the actual possible could be in the way that we deliver services. User centricity is at the core of our solutions. I mentioned about the user centricity earlier in the double diamond slide. It's critical to the success to understand problems and deliver value, having humanisation and users at the centre of what we do in the lab and thinking about them. And I play a pivotal role as a product person as well, and absolutely making sure that the people that we surround ourselves with in the lab, we have user researchers, business analysts, technologists, innovation specialists, we all come from an ethos of understanding that problem-centred, user-centric approach in the things that we do. Demonstrating your value and demonstrating our value, that has to be grounded in problems, grounded in value, grounded in this idea can be leveraged and this is how it can help and this is the value that it's got. And translating that between all of the perspectives is part of what I do, it's part of my job, but it's absolutely vital that we can demonstrate some value or no value, that it's not the right thing to do, as I mentioned earlier about the failure. Multi-perspective community, one of my favourite things, intersection of perspectives, diversity, lots of different kind of skill sets, lots of different views. That really creates the magic, so to speak, in an innovation space. It really sparks challenge, it really sparks divergent thinking, and it really helps us to leverage the best ideas and test those out in the best way. Solving cross-cutting problems, going across government, going wider, going bigger, leveraging ecosystems to really solve problems and think about them in a different way is, again, key to what we do and a really good principle of success. We're learning driven, absolutely. Every idea that we test, every place that we go to, every kind of innovation aspect that we do, it has to be grounded in some learning as well. The outputs and how valuable they are, whether it's the right thing to do, whether it's not the right thing to do. We're on a learning journey and we are really keen to share those learnings outwards. And, from everybody that's around the innovation space, the sponsorships and the senior people that we work with, as well as lots of other people in and around the organisation and beyond, it has to be learning driven, and we continually evolve the way and the approach that we do some of our things to make sure that we maximise the learning outputs all of the time. Pace and rapid innovation. I've talked about the pace at which we work. I've talked about rapid innovation. We know the landscape in which we work, how quickly that changes from month to month, day to day, year to year. We've known ourselves, we've experienced how quickly our lives have changed and been completely flipped upside down from where we were a year ago, and how that has changed on a day-to-day basis. And we've adapted to that, but the pace and the rapid innovation is key, and leveraging the ideas and leveraging the pace of innovation is absolutely a principle, again, of the innovation success. Okay, so thank you for listening. I hope you found the information that I've shared with you interesting. I hope you found it inspiring. We're really keen to make sure that we can share the successes of the innovation that's happening across the department and what that's meant in a particular timeframe that we're working in and the landscape that we're working in right now. You can connect with DWP Digital across multi-social media platforms. There's my Twitter handle right there as well. Really open to connections. I think I've explained that enough in my passion for people and connections and how important that is to me. So please feel free to reach out to the department, DWP Digital, and myself in any way. And I hope that's been useful. I'm really open to take any questions. So please feel free.
Maxine, I can hear and hopefully I can see you. Yep, I can. Maxine, welcome. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. It's good to be here. Thank you.
No, it's great to have you with us, and thanks for a really interesting presentation. Really nice narrative, and great to understand further about the innovation labs within DWP. We had quite a few years ago now, and I think he has since moved on. We had Mayank Prakash present at one of our events, and he was sharing some kind of digital transformation stories, and that was about 4 or 5 years ago. So it's really interesting for me to kind of see, where DWP was then and how far it's come now. And it's very clear the transformation of the department through those last years, and how the kind of the technology onboarded and the real focus on that citizen experience. So good to see. And yeah, enough waffling on. we'll get going with some questions. I've got a question that's kind of been echoed throughout today and also throughout the event series over the past few months, and that's down to the difficulty in running a team and running a department, particularly during the last 12 months. You say in your presentation as well, you came from a creative background, so more of like a non-technical background basis. So how difficult has it been for you to kind of lead on the lab during the pandemic? What have kind of been the barriers and challenges in doing such?
Yeah, it's a really interesting point and so relevant for everybody right now, isn't it? I think for me, personal challenges have been probably adapting to kind of different ways of life and day-to-day living. I'm a mum, I'm a wife, I have the kids, I have a family, and I have a life around me. So trying to exist and be really professional and really kind of progress and promote the lab in addition to all that, it's obviously been a personal challenge, and I'm sure a lot of people can empathize with that situation. Creating a team and creating a new team and bringing lots of diverse people together in a short space of time, which is what we've done in the lab, again, has all been done throughout the past year. Absolutely trying to find lots of ways to regularly communicate that's not just an endless Zoom call is really important, and trying to find and carve out the right time to communicate and share and collaborate in lots of different ways. We still keep trying that out in lots of different guys on a day-to-day basis, but one of the key points from that, one of the challenges is the communication when you're working remotely is absolutely key, and you have to find the best ways to suit the team to do that in a way that you're able to collaborate as well and deliver some really creative and some really divergent kind of outcomes as well. They're all challenges, but we just have to keep trying to find different ways to do it. But the key to all of that for me is that we have to communicate and we have to talk and we have to find good ways in which we can do it.
Sure, nice, good answer. And we've had a question come in from Dawn here. Hi Maxine, great talk. Really interesting insights from you. Could you tell us a little bit about the type of services that the Innovation Lab has been involved in, improving for either customers or employees of the DWP, and what sort of success the labs have enjoyed? Thanks so much.
Yeah, so again, the depth and diversity, I think hopefully I touched on this a little bit within the presentation, but didn't really explore the kind of context of it. The depth and diversity of ideas spans lots and lots of different spaces across the department, and touches lots of different services. So I described there the type of services that we offer in the first instance. So from unemployment support to people that are ill, health support, getting people back into work, lots and lots of different types. And the ideas and things that we kind of covered in the lab and will be covering and a feature as part of our pipeline span the depth and diversity of all of that. More recently, just to give you some examples, we've touched upon ways of working internally for some of our professional communities in the research space. How do we enable them to conduct research, to understand and find out insights in a different way to the traditional methods of going out and doing that research? How can we use platforms that exist to enable them to do some kind of research? So that's an example that touches on some of our internal ways of working. We've touched on things in the past that are around identity, complex needs. So how can we understand the needs of citizens and enable our agents and our work coaches to respond to those needs when they span into kind of the complexities of life as well, and get the right support for those individuals. So a real breadth of mix of innovation that we've touched and worked with numerous different kind of partnerships to bring in different ideas and expose different technologies in those spaces.
Good stuff. Another question in from Andy here. Hi, Maxine. What do you think is the most important thing when driving the cultural change?
Oh, it's a really interesting one. I think for me, there's definitely something about having and understanding the allies that can enable amplification about an innovation culture. There's creating environments in which you can allow people to feel comfortable around, some kind of elements that they might feel not necessarily comfortable with when you are going into an innovation space, and that's not the day-to-day thing they do. So there's definitely around creating safety in those environments to allow people to embrace the culture more and create open cultures where they can talk about it as well. And I think, as well as having that sponsorship and amplification to leverage and present and promote, there's definitely something about sometimes slowly drip feeding and showing what the art of the possible is a good way to pivot and change mindsets and to get people on board. A demonstration of what is possible is a great way to influence people's thinking and cultures and the way that they might want to approach something next.
Yeah, no, that's a good answer. And then finally, one question I've got here and kind of wanted to discuss was when I've heard from previous presentations, previous events, we've had quite a few speakers, obviously from the private sector, talking about their innovation labs and how they're set up to work and everything. And a lot of them always talk about they're great because within them they remove a certain level of bureaucracy. They can move at speed. Is that the case with yourselves? Obviously, the government is it's public sector. It's all very, or is it very different? But what's your take on that?
Yeah, so there's definitely something about touching upon safe spaces in which to experiment, and we can kind of leverage that a little bit more than day-to-day business as usual in the lab. But there's still an appreciation of the complexity and actually, in reality, how do you bring an idea to life? I mentioned that we don't productionize anything, but it's really key that we understand the landscape in which we work and that we can, work with SMEs and stakeholders to really inform and shape an idea that actually, if we do generate and we do find out throughout the experimentation that there is value and there is some leverage, it's got a place to land and it's got a place to then be made a reality, as I've said. But it's important within that space that we do have a bit of a space to experiment, but it's still done within a great understanding of how you translate it into the real world as well.
Perfect. Well, that's all we've got time for there, Maxine. But thanks again for joining, and real nice presentation, and got a good understanding now of the innovation labs, and it's good to see the work that you're doing. And as mentioned at the start, just that evolution since we had Mayank back in, I think it was 2016 or 17 perhaps. That evolution from there to now is great to see. So thanks for sharing your story and more on the innovation labs, and thanks also for joining for the Q&A session. Really do appreciate it.
That's great to hear. Thank you.